Every school has that one quiet kid. At Westbrook High, that kid was Ethan. He was small for his age, with soft brown hair that always seemed to fall in front of his eyes. He never spoke much, and when he did, his voice was barely louder than a whisper. Most days, Ethan just sat at the back of the classroom, trying to disappear. But hiding didn't keep the trouble away. A group of popular boys, led by a tall, loud kid named Jake, made it their mission to make Ethan's life miserable. Every day, Jake and his friends found new ways to bother him. Sometimes they shoved him in the hallways. Other times, they laughed at him and called him names no one else dared to say out loud. In class, Ethan stayed silent. He never fought back. He didn't want to make things worse. The teachers seemed busy or distracted, and the other students looked the other way. No one helped. No one stood up for him. The school felt like a place full of noise and chaos, except for Ethan's quiet corner. But inside him, the stillness was not empty. There was something more beneath the surface, a strength no one knew about. The kind of strength you can't see from the outside. Still, that strength was buried deep. Day after day, the bullying crushed a part of Ethan's spirit. The loneliness wrapped around him like a heavy blanket, making him feel smaller and smaller. He was just a shadow in a crowded school, lost and unheard. Every day felt like a battle for Ethan. The bullies found new ways to make him suffer, and it never stopped. One morning, during lunch, Ethan sat quietly at his usual spot by the window. He opened his lunchbox, hoping for a peaceful moment. But before he could take a bite, Jake's friends snatched it away. They tossed the sandwich into the trash right in front of him, laughing loud enough for everyone to hear. Ethan just looked down, saying nothing. In the hallways, it was no better. As Ethan walked to his next class, Jake suddenly stepped in front of him and tripped him hard. Ethan hit the floor, the books spilling everywhere. The hall grew silent for a moment, but instead of helping, most students hurried past. Some smiled uncomfortably, but no one. Ethan scrambled up quickly, cheeks burning with shame, and hurried away before anyone could see the tears that stung his eyes. Jake and his gang shouted things like loser, freak, and worse, words that echoed inside Ethan's mind long after school ended. Sometimes they called him a coward for never standing up to them. It was like a never-ending storm, and Ethan had no umbrella to protect himself. Teachers noticed, sometimes, but they never did much. One time, a teacher caught Jake pushing Ethan and told him to stop, but Jake just smirked and said, "He's fine." After that, the bullying got worse because Jake knew he wouldn't get into serious trouble. At home, Ethan's world was just as quiet but for different reasons. His parents worked long hours and were tired when they came home. They asked little about school and never noticed the bruises on his arms or the sadness in his eye. Ethan didn't want to bother them with problems they couldn't fix, so he kept it all inside, locked away. Every day, Ethan carried the weight of fear and loneliness like a heavy stone in his chest. The bullying was breaking him bit by bit. His spirit, once bright with dreams and hope, was now almost gone. He felt invisible, like no one saw the real Ethan beneath the pain. One morning, the school announced something different. A local martial arts tournament open to all students. The principal made the announcement over the loudspeaker, and the whole school buzzed with excitement. Students whispered about who might enter and who would win. Like he'd ever sign up for something like that, Jake sneered, making the others laugh too. They enjoyed imagining Ethan failing in front of everyone. Ethan didn't say a word. He stayed quiet, sitting in the back as usual. But if anyone had looked closely, they might have seen something new in his eyes, a faint spark of interest, a quiet flicker of determination. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it was there, burning softly beneath the surface. A small hope that maybe things could change. Maybe he didn't have to be invisible anymore. The idea of the tournament stayed with him, quietly growing stronger. What no one at school knew was that Ethan wasn't as quiet and helpless as he seemed. For years he had been secretly training in martial arts. Every week, after school and on weekends, he went to a small dojo across town, a place where he felt safe and strong. It all started when Ethan was younger. His uncle, a calm and patient man, had taught him the basics. At first, Ethan wasn't sure if he would like. The moves were hard to learn and the training was tough. But slowly, something inside him began to change. Martial arts gave Ethan a new kind of strength. Not just the power to fight, but the power to believe in himself. The dojo was his quiet world away from the bullying and the loneliness. There, he was no longer the shy boy everyone ignored. He was focused, confident, and proud. During training, Ethan practiced every kick, punch, and block with care. His instructor told him it wasn't about hurting others, but about control, respect, and patience. Those lessons became a part of him, even when he was back at school, sitting quietly in his seat. Still, the thought of entering the tournament made Ethan nervous. What if the bullies laughed at him even more? What if he failed in front of everyone? But deep down, something pushed him forward, the chance to show who he really was. The night before the tournament, Ethan lay awake, his heart pounding. He knew this wasn't just a competition, it was a test of everything he had learned. Would he be brave enough to step into the ring and face the world? No one at school suspected the secret he carried, and maybe, just maybe, that secret would change everything. The day of the tournament arrived faster than Ethan expected. The gym was packed with students, families, and teachers. Bright lights hung from the ceiling, shining down on the mats where fighters would compete. The noise was loud, cheering crowds, the sound of feet on the floor, and the referee's whistle, cutting through the air. The energy buzzed like electricity, filling the room with excitement and tension. Ethan slipped into the gym quietly, his heart pounding in his chest. Most people didn't notice him. He wore a plain jacket over his martial arts uniform, trying to blend, but in the back of the room, Jake and his friends spotted him right away. "Look who's here," Jake sneered, nudging his friends. "Ready to get humiliated, loser?" They laughed loud enough for Ethan to hear, trying to shake his confidence. Ethan's stomach twisted, but he didn't answer. Instead, he took a deep breath and reminded himself why he was here. His hands felt steady, and inside, a calm focus grew stronger. This was his moment, and he wouldn't let fear control him. The matches started one by one. When it was Ethan's turn, he stepped onto the mat with quiet confidence. At first, the crowd whispered and looked surprised. Ethan moved with a steady rhythm, blocking and striking with smooth, practiced skill. One by one, he won his rounds, his calm strength catching everyone off guard. With every victory, the crowd grew louder. Whispers turned into cheers. Ethan's classmates, who never looked his way before, watched in amazement. But Jake's face twisted with anger. He clenched his fists and shouted from the sidelines, "You don't belong here. You'll lose soon enough." Jake's frustration only made him more aggressive. He started betting with his friends, certain Ethan would trip up. But Ethan stayed focused, blocking out the noise and the insults. Every move was deliberate, every step measured. The tournament was heating up, and the final rounds were close. Ethan wasn't just fighting for a trophy, he was fighting to be seen for who he really was. The crowd waited, holding their breath, ready to see what would happen next. The moment everyone had been waiting for had finally come. The final match was set, Ethan versus Jake. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps as the two boys stepped onto the mat, facing each other under the bright lights. For the first time, Ethan was not just the quiet kid in the back of the class, he was the center of attention. Jake glared at Ethan, his eyes full of anger and disbelief. "This is going to be easy," he spat. The referee raised his hand, signaling the start of the fight. The fight began tense and fast. Jake charged forward, trying to catch Ethan off guard. He threw wild punches, hoping to overpower him, but Ethan stayed calm, moving with quiet control. He dodged and blocked every attack, his body flowing like water, smooth and precise. Jake, frustrated by Ethan's skill, started to use dirty tricks. He aimed a low kick at Ethan's knee, trying to trip him. He grabbed Ethan's arm roughly, trying to throw him off balance. The crowd gasped at Jake's rough moves, but Ethan didn't lose his focus. With steady breath, Ethan used his training. He slipped out of Jake's grip and countered with a quick, controlled strike. His movements were sharp but respectful, showing the discipline he had learned. Every block, every step, every punch was filled with purpose. The fight was close. Jake's attacks grew more desperate, his face red with anger. Ethan's heart pounded, but his mind stayed clear. He saw every opening, every weakness. Near misses made the crowd hold their breath. Every second felt like a lifetime. Then in a sudden twist, Jake's aggression turned against him. As he lunged forward, trying a reckless move, He lost his balance and twisted his ankle badly. He fell to the mat, wincing in pain. The referee quickly stepped in. Jake was disqualified for the dangerous and unfair moves. The crowd fell silent for a moment, then erupted into cheers for Ethan. Ethan stood tall but didn't celebrate loudly. He bowed respectfully to the referee, and Jake, showing the true spirit of martial arts, control, respect, and honor. He had won not just by skill, but by keeping his calm and dignity when it mattered most. In that moment, Ethan wasn't just the quiet kid anymore. He was a champion. The gym exploded with cheers as Ethan stood quietly on the mat, the winner of the tournament. For the first time, the crowd wasn't laughing or whispering. They were clapping and shouting his name. Ethan's classmates stared in disbelief. The boy they had ignored and teased had just beaten the school bully in front of everyone. Jake and his gang were silent. The loud voices that had once filled the halls with cruelty were gone. Their faces were a mix of shock, embarrassment, and anger. But there was nothing they could say. Ethan had shown them something they never expected, a strength they hadn't seen before. Some nodded with quiet respect. Others approached him with kind words. Even the students who never spoke to him before seemed to see him for who he truly was. Inside, Ethan felt something shift. The heavy weight of fear and loneliness began to lift. He stood a little taller, his chest a little prouder. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged, not because he had won a trophy, but because he had found his own voice, the voice that said he was strong, worthy, and capable. But Ethan didn't brag or show off. He packed up his things calmly and walked out of the gym, his steps steady and sure. The quiet boy had changed, but he was still the same Ethan, only now, he carried a new kind of power inside. Sometimes the loudest voices aren't the strongest. Sometimes the quietest people hold the deepest strength. And when that strength finally shines, it can change everything. This story reminds us that kindness and respect matter more than anything. It's easy to judge someone by how they look or act, but we never truly know the strength they carry inside. Sometimes the quietest people have the biggest hearts and the greatest courage. If you or someone you know is struggling, remember it's okay to stand up for yourself and for others. Strength isn't just about fighting, it's about hope, patience, and believing in yourself. No matter how hard things get, courage can grow quietly, ready to shine when the time is right.